left to die. The sun blazed mercilessly over the endless expanse of sand and rock. Somewhere between the barren cliffs and dried riverbeds, a figure stumbled and fell to her knees, coughing up blood and dust. Her clothes were torn, her skin scorched and cracked. Her name was Eliza Hart, and she had been left to die in the unforgiving desert. 2 days earlier, she had been riding in a stagecoach with a group of strangers, hopeful of reaching the distant mining town of Sundown Ridge, where she intended to start a new life. She had little left in the world. Her father, a gambler, had drunk himself into an early grave, and her fiancé had vanished with all her savings. Sundown Ridge was supposed to be her fresh start, but fate, it seemed, had other plans. Bandits struck the stagecoach in the dead of night. They took everything of value and killed the driver and the guards. When Eliza fought back, slashing at one of the attackers with a hidden knife, the leader, a grizzled man with dead eyes, ordered her dragged into the desert and abandoned. "You want to act tough, girl?" he sneered. "Let's see how tough you are without water." The last thing she remembered was the sound of their laughter fading into the night. Now, she was utterly alone. Eliza struggled to her feet, every bone in her body aching. Her lips were cracked, her vision blurry. Buzzards circled overhead, sensing death. She had no weapons, no supplies. Only rage burned inside her heart, hotter than the sun itself. She didn't want to die. Somewhere on the horizon, shimmering through the heat waves, she thought she saw movement. A rider? A hallucination? Her body screamed to collapse, but she forced herself to move forward, one broken step at a time. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time was a meaningless blur. Then, when she could go no further, she collapsed face first into the sand, and strong hands lifted her up. She blinked through the haze to see a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. His clothes were dusty and simple, his boots worn from miles of hard travel. He said nothing, just lifted her into his arms as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. She blacked out again. When Eliza awoke, she was inside a small, cool cabin built from rough timber and stone. A pot of water sat beside her, and she drank greedily. The man sat nearby, silently carving a piece of wood with a hunting knife. His movements were slow, deliberate. His face was weathered and unreadable, a man who had seen many hard years. "Name's Caleb Ward," he said finally, his voice deep and calm. "Found you out by Red Hollow. Figured you could use a hand." Eliza croaked out her name. "Eliza Hart." He nodded once, then went back to his carving. Over the next few days, Caleb nursed her back to health. He spoke little, but his actions were kind. He cooked simple meals, made sure she had water, and gave her space to heal. There were no questions about who she was or what had happened. No judgments, just silent understanding. It was in the quiet of those days that Eliza realized something. Caleb wasn't just saving her life. He was teaching her something she had never known: patience, strength, resilience. But anger still boiled in her blood. "I need to find them," she said one evening, her voice low and hard. "The ones who left me to die. I can't just walk away." Caleb looked up from his work, his eyes sharp beneath the brim of his hat. "You can't hunt men unless you're ready to finish it," he said. "Killing changes you. Forever." "I don't care," she said. "They already changed me." For the first time, a faint ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Then you'll need to learn a fight." Thus began the hardest days of Eliza's life. Caleb was not an easy teacher. He trained her in the brutal ways of the desert: how to track a man by footprints, how to shoot straight under pressure, how to move silently across sand and stone. She learned to ride faster, hide better, strike first. Every morning she woke sore and bruised. Every night she fell asleep with her muscles screaming for rest. But with each passing day, the weak girl who had been left to die faded away. In her place grew someone leaner, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. Caleb never praised her, but he didn't have to. She saw the approval in his quiet glances, the trust when he handed her a Rayal rifle instead of the practice stick. By the end of the second week, Eliza could outshoot a rattlesnake at 20 paces. One evening, As the blood-red sun dipped below the desert hills, Caleb sat across from her by the fire. "Tomorrow," he said, "we ride." She nodded, her heart pounding with grim determination. "Are you ready?" he asked. Eliza stared into the flames, seeing not the fire but the faces of the men who had wronged her. "I'm ready," she whispered. Tomorrow, she would find them. Tomorrow, she would make the pay. Fight for life. The next morning, before the first light touched the desert sands, Eliza saddled the old Mustang Caleb had given her. The rifle hung across her back, a knife strapped to her hip, and a coil of rope at her side. Caleb rode beside her, silent as always, his face unreadable beneath the broad-brimmed hat. They headed west, following faint tracks only Caleb could see. Broken twigs, disturbed stones, footprints barely visible in the dust. Eliza marveled at how easily he read the desert's secrets, as if the land itself whispered to him. After hours of riding, Caleb pulled up his horse near a rocky outcrop overlooking a shallow valley. He dismounted, pulling a battered spyglass from his saddlebag. "There," he said, handing it to Eliza. Through the lens, she saw them, the bandits. 5 of them, lounging near a makeshift camp, their horses grazing nearby. They laughed and drank, their rifles stacked casually against a rock. Her stomach twisted at the sight of them, but she forced herself to stay calm. "You know the plan?" Caleb asked. Eliza nodded. "Wait until dark. Separate them. Take them out one by one." "Good." He placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, the first time he'd ever touched her beyond necessity. "No mercy, Eliza. Not for men like that." She swallowed hard. "I understand." When night fell, the desert became a sea of shadows. The campfire of the bandits flickered weakly against the vast darkness. Eliza crept down the rocks, moving silently like Caleb had taught her. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but her hands were steady. She was not the same woman who had been left to die. The first bandit, a thin man with a crooked nose, wandered away from the camp to relieve himself behind a boulder. Eliza struck without hesitation, slitting his throat before he could scream. She dragged his body into the shadows, her hands steady even as blood soaked into the sand. One down. Next, she baited another away by throwing a rock into the darkness. When he went to investigate, Caleb was waiting. A single silent shot from his rifle dropped the man instantly. 2 down. Panic began to ripple through the camp. The 3 remaining bandits grabbed their guns, shouting into the night. Eliza fired from the darkness, clipping one in the leg. He screamed and fell, and Caleb finished him off with another shot. Only 2 left now, and Eliza recognized them. One was the man who had dragged her into the desert. The other was the leader, the grizzled man with dead eyes. "You cowards!" the leader roared, firing blindly into the dark. "Show yourselves." Eliza stepped into the firelight, rifle raised. "You looking for me?" she said, her voice steady as iron. The men froze, stunned. "You," the leader snarled. "I should have finished you myself." "You should have," she agreed coldly, and fired. The shot hit him square in the chest. He staggered back, shock on his face, and collapsed. The last man dropped his gun and fell to his knees. "Please," he whimpered. "I didn't want to. It was all him. I didn't." Eliza approached slowly, gun still raised. "You dragged me into the desert," she said. "You laughed when they left me to die." "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "Please." She hesitated. Killing in a fight was one thing. Killing a begging, unarmed man was another. Caleb appeared beside her, silent as a ghost. He didn't tell her what to do. He simply watched. Eliza lowered her rifle slightly. "Walk," she said. The man scrambled to his feet and ran into the darkness, tripping and sobbing. Caleb raised an eyebrow at her. "You sure?" he asked. She shrugged. "The desert will take him." They left the bodies where they fell. The buzzards would find them by morning. They rode back to Caleb's cabin in silence. The stars overhead seemed brighter than usual, the desert wind cooler and gentler. At the cabin, Caleb dismounted and turned to her. "You did good," he said simply. Eliza dismounted too, feeling an unfamiliar weight lift from her shoulders. "I couldn't have done it without you." He nodded, accepting the compliment without comment. She looked around at the endless desert, at the empty horizon. She realized she had no reason to stay now. No unfinished business, no debts left to settle. What now? She asked. Caleb shrugged. You're free. Go find yourself a life. She thought about it. She could head to Sundown Ridge, after all. Maybe find honest work, maybe build something real. Or she looked at Caleb, at the rough little cabin, at the endless wild beyond. I think, she said slowly, I'll stay a while. Caleb didn't smile, but there was a warmth in his eyes. Suit yourself. And so she stayed. In the desert, where the sun burned hot and the nights ran cold, where life was harsh but pure, she built a new life. She learned the ways of the land, rode alongside Caleb, fought off rustlers and wild beasts. She became a name whispered in awe by the townsfolk. The woman who had been left to die, but returned stronger than anyone dared imagine. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. She was a fighter. And the desert was her home.